We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Asean in Focus on tonight's headlines. U.S. President Joe Biden has said he makes no apologies for shooting down an alleged Chinese spy balloon off the coast of the U.S. Diplomatic friction between the U.S. and China is heating up. Now Beijing has charged that U.S. high-altitude balloons flew over its Xinjiang and Tibet regions. Meanwhile, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman also said that the U.S. hopes China will not use any visits by U.S. lawmakers to Taiwan as an excuse for military action, adding that all countries should warn Beijing against conflict over the island. And a Care for Humanity event held in Da Nang, Vietnam. Eliana Faith Sebastian will report. First, new details on President Biden coming out for the first time to talk about the U.S. Air Force shooting down what Washington says was a high-tech Chinese spy balloon earlier this month. U.S. President Joe Biden says he will talk to his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. Take a look.
The other thing I want to point out is that we are going to keep our allies and the Congress contemporaneously informed of all we know and all we learn. And I expect to be speaking with President Xi, and I hope we are going to get to the bottom of this. But I make no apologies for taking down that balloon.
President Biden drew a clear distinction between the Chinese balloon and the three smaller objects shot down afterwards. Take a look.
I want to be clear. We don't have any evidence that there has been a sudden increase in the number of objects in the sky. We're now just seeing more of them, partially because the steps we've taken to increase our radars, to narrow our radars. And we have to keep adapting our approach to dealing with these challenges. That's why I've directed my team to come back to me with sharper rules for how we will deal with these unidentified objects moving forward, distinguishing between those that are likely to pose safety and security risks that necessitate action and those that do not. But make no mistake, if any object presents a threat to the safety and security of the American people, I will take it down.
Diplomatic friction between the United States and China is heating up. Now Beijing has charged that U.S. high-altitude balloons flew over its Xinjiang and Tibet regions and said it would take measures against U.S. entities that undermine Chinese sovereignty.
As we pointed out, since May last year, the U.S. has released a large number of high-altitude balloons from its territory, which have continuously circled the globe and illegally flown over China's airspace, including Xinjiang and Tibet, more than 10 times at least, without the approval of relevant Chinese authorities. With regard to the entry of the Chinese civilian airship, we have repeatedly communicated it to the U.S. side. The U.S., however, says nothing about the illegal flight of its balloons over China's airspace, and even implied that China is spreading disinformation. The U.S. cited the entry of the Chinese airship as a violation of its sovereignty. Then how does it explain the illegal overflight of its balloons through China's airspace? China has handled the U.S. balloons in a calm and professional manner, but the U.S. overreacted to the Chinese airship. The U.S. needs to give an explanation to China and international community, reflect on its behavior, stop smearing and attacking China, and stop misleading the U.S. public and the world. China reserves the right to further respond if necessary.
Meanwhile, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman slammed Beijing's claims that accused Washington of flying high-altitude balloons over China, underlining that such statements are not true. Take a look.
The PRC has said it was a weather balloon. We know that not to be the case. They have now said that there have been a gazillion balloons by the U.S. over China. That is absolutely not true. There are no U.S. government balloons over China, period.
U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman also said that the U.S. hopes China will not use any visits by U.S. lawmakers to Taiwan as an excuse for military action, adding that all countries should warn Beijing against conflict over the island. Let's listen in.
One of the things a lot of people in the world don't understand is that, and Americans as well, 50% of all shipping at one point or another goes through the Taiwan Strait. So if there is conflict in the Taiwan Strait, it's not just a matter of security for Asia. It is a matter of economic security for the entire world. One of the things I think that the world has come to understand is that through the unprovoked, premeditated, and horrifying invasion by Vladimir Putin of Ukraine, is that conflicts in one part of the world have impacts on the rest of the world. That horrifying invasion of Ukraine has increased energy insecurity for the whole world, has created food insecurity for the whole world, has increased inflationary pressures on the whole world. And the same would be true of a conflict in the Taiwan Strait. And so I urge all countries to tell the PRC, this affects me, this affects my people, my country, this is not a good idea. We know because Xi Jinping has said himself that he is determined to reunify Taiwan with the mainland. We believe very strongly that there should be no unilateral action that disturbs the peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. And we are committed to support Taiwan in its ability to defend itself under the our One China policy, guided by the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 joint communiques, and the 6 assurances. That policy has not changed. Our One China policy stands. We will continue to assist Taiwan, and we hope that the PRC does not use a visit by a member of Congress to Taiwan as a pretext for military action.
Secretary Sherman, on Taiwan, there's debate in Washington on whether, in order to counterbalance Beijing's growing.
Coming out of the pandemic, Southeast Asians' top concern came out as bread and butter issues, such as unemployment and economic recession, according to a new survey. The State of Southeast Asia 2023 survey report gathered views from 1,308 respondents from academia, business government, civil society, and the media in the 10 ASEAN countries. The next 2 main concerns were potential military tensions and that of ASEAN being slow and ineffective. Professor Tommy Kaw in the discussion said that Southeast Asia is a bright spot, and Mr. Shiv Shankar Menon, who reminded us that ASEAN had overcome adversity in the past. Take a look.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shankar. I would like to focus on the economic concerns. I would say that in general, these concerns are shared by people in other parts of the world. However, one of the concerns, the fear of recession, is misplaced. I will explain. The ASEAN countries, individually and collectively, have actually done well. They succeeded in balancing the need to protect lives with the need to protect jobs. And when it was, as soon as it was possible, they removed the COVID-19 restrictions and opened up the economy. As a result, I would say that in a dismal world, ASEAN is a bright spot. The ADB has estimated that in 2023, the group as a whole will grow by about 4.6%, which compared to other parts of the world is a very good number. I was actually very surprised by the perceptions ASEAN is ineffective and slow and so on, ASEAN, unlike the European Union, is an intergovernmental organization. It's a community of 10 sovereign countries, which are very diverse, have different interests. And our policy is always to consult and to arrive at a consensus. And this takes time. So sometimes it may appear to be slow, but the slowness is required by the process of consultation and consensus making. I would defend ASEAN and say, on the whole, ASEAN has not been slow. We responded very rapidly to the COVID-19 crisis. We adopted an ASEAN Comprehensive Economic Recovery Framework, which have helped to facilitate the recovery of the economies of the region. On Myanmar, as soon as the military seized power on the 1st of February, we convened a leaders' meeting in Jakarta, which adopted the 5-point consensus. So I would defend ASEAN and say that the perception that we are slow, we are ineffective, we are unable to respond quickly to new development is an unfair perception.
And just to add, I'm not sure I understand the concern about ASEAN's capabilities. These are tough times, but ASEAN has a very good track record of changing and adapting to tough times. In fact, it was formed in difficult circumstances and adapted to each subsequent geopolitical shift and change. Post-Vietnam War, China-US rapprochement, now China-US rivalry, unipolar moment, end of the Cold War. Each time ASEAN adjusted. The global slowdown, economic slowdown. So I assume that in these tough times, ASEAN will change and evolve again. And I think that's what we're seeing happening around us.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Meanwhile, the Department of Foreign Affairs stood by the Philippine Coast Guard's account on the laser pointing incident at the Ayungin Shoal. Following a denial from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Maria Teresita Daza said the MOFA or MOFA has denied that the Chinese Coast Guard involved had a military-grade laser on board. Let's listen in.
So, after experiencing temporary blindness, sila naman ay agad na bigyan ng medical attention ng ating medical officer on board. And then pagdating po nila sa puerto, sa Palawan, ay agad po natin itong ipina-check up sa mga doctors doon. At sa kasalukuyan po, sila naman po ay sinasabing naibalik na uli yung ayos nilang sight, no? Yung vision nila. So it is important for us to highlight that the mission was accomplished. We were able to provide escort. This is already the second time. No? The first time that we experienced the laser pointing of the Chinese Coast Guard was June last year. No? When the BRP Habagat, no? Ito ay isang tugboat, no? Coast Guard tugboat, ay tumutulong din sa pagkakandak ng RORE mission, ay natutukan ng na-expose dito for almost 20 minutes. Kaya lang ang difference is that blue lights ito na ginamit, ngayon ang ginamit nila is green. Where in fact, ang nangyari pa no, nung na-expose ang Coast Guard dito, ay nagkaroon sila ng temporary blindness din at skin itchiness, no? Yung pangangati ng balat.
We provided the facts and China's principled position. For the purpose of clarity, I would like to provide some more details. As is widely known, China has indisputable sovereignty over the Nansha Islands, including the Ren'ai Reef. On February the 6th, a Philippine Coast Guard vessel intruded into the waters adjacent to the Ren'ai Reef. Without Chinese permission, China Coast Guard ship was compelled to respond in accordance with law and warned the vessel to leave. During that process, China Coast Guard ship used handheld laser speed detector and handheld green light pointer to measure the distance and speed of the Philippine vessel and signal directions to ensure navigation safety. I need to highlight that China Coast Guard ship did not direct lasers at the Philippine crew, and the handheld equipment does not inflict damage on anything or anyone on the vessel. The Philippine side's allegation does not reflect the truth. The Chinese ambassador to the Philippines has clarified the facts with the Philippine leaders. The diplomatic service and coast guards on both sides are in communication through bilateral liaison mechanisms. The Philippines has learned what actually happened. We are ready to work with them to fully deliver on the important common understandings reached between our two presidents, continue to properly handle maritime issues through friendly consultation, and jointly uphold peace and stability in the South China Sea.
Now, in a statement on Tuesday, Manila time, U.S. Department of State spokesman Ned Price said China's conduct was provocative and unsafe, resulting in the temporary blindness of the crew members of the BRP Malapascua and interfering with the Philippines' lawful operations in and around 2nd Thomas Shoal. The U.S. spokesman reaffirmed that an armed attack on Philippine Armed Forces public vessels or aircraft, including those of the Philippine Coast Guard in the South China Sea, would invoke U.S. mutual defense commitments under Article 4 of the 1951 U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty. In tonight's other news, YouTube chief Susan Wojcicki said Thursday that she is stepping down after nearly a decade as CEO of the world's most popular online video service. Wojcicki was one of the most prominent women in Silicon Valley, will shift to an advisory role at Google, YouTube's parent company, after being with the tech titan since it was a startup in her garage. After nearly 25 years here, she said, "I've decided to step back from my role as the head of YouTube and start a new chapter focused on my family, health, and personal projects I'm passionate about," Wojcicki said in a note to employees. Now, she became involved with Google when founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page set up shop in the garage of her home in Silicon Valley back in 1998, becoming the company's first marketing manager a year later. Now, her time leading YouTube has included handling concerns over child privacy on the platform, as well as battling the spread of misinformation, notably during the COVID-19 pandemic. She was in charge of YouTube when it launched a streaming television service as viewers increasingly turned to the internet for shows and films. In other news, rising seas pose unthinkable risks to billions around the world, with profound implications for security, international law, human rights, and the very fabric of societies. Senior officials told the Security Council as members held their first ever debate on the phenomenon's global implications. Describing sea level rise as a threat multiplier, the UN Secretary General said the phenomenon also jeopardizes access to water, food, and healthcare. Take a look.
Rising seas threaten lives and jeopardize access to water, food, and health care. Saltwater intrusion can decimate jobs and entire economies in key industries like agriculture, fisheries, and tourism. It can damage or destroy vital infrastructure, including transportation systems, hospitals, and schools, especially when combined with extreme weather events linked to the climate crisis. And rising seas threaten the very existence of some low-lying communities and even countries. Under any scenario, countries like Bangladesh, China, India, and the Netherlands are all at risk. Megacities on every continent will face serious impacts, including Cairo, Lagos, Maputo, Bangkok, Dhaka, Jakarta, Mumbai, Shanghai, Copenhagen, London, Los Angeles, New York, Buenos Aires, and Santiago. The danger is especially acute for nearly 900 million people who live in coastal zones at low elevations and that's 1 out of 10 people on Earth. The consequences of all of these are unthinkable. Low-lying communities and the entire countries could disappear forever. We would witness a mass exodus of entire populations on a biblical scale. And we would see ever fiercer competition for fresh water, land, and other resources.
Now, citing projections that between 250 and 400 million people will likely need new homes in new locations in fewer than 80 years, he also warned of devastating impacts for the world's bread baskets, especially fertile deltas along the Nile, Mekong, and other rivers. He also urged the Council to recognize the significance of climate action as a key tool for peace building, stressing that the data and frameworks to defend against the sea level threat already exist. In tonight's other story, a Care for Humanity event was held in Da Nang, Vietnam. Eliana Faith Sebastian reports.
We are here in Phuoc Vuong Center Hotel, Da Nang, Vietnam to witness the Care for Humanity, an event launched by the Iglesia ni Cristo or the Church of Christ through the Felix Y. Manala Foundation. In the said gathering, members and their guests are expected to attend.
The event started with a special worship service for the 15th anniversary of Da Nang Group Worship Service. It was then followed by a film showing entitled FYM Foundation, A Decade of Humanity. The guests then received care packages containing beddings and jackets. And finally, the attendees enjoyed the sumptuous buffet and entertainment.
The beneficiaries of what we have distributed today are the children who are studying here in Vietnam but they came from Ukraine without parents looking at them. Some of our fellow members of the church are the ones tasked by the school to take care of them. And they were able to bring them here in this place. And we pray that someday they would also know and recognize the true religion. That's a part of our message to them, for them today. And we will continue to conduct this Care for Humanity project here in this country, and we promise to remain united always with our beloved executive minister, and not only in this country but even in some other countries under the ecclesiastical district of Thailand. We will take care of our fellow men and our countrymen.
I hope that I can also join in this kind of things, and I want to support the Christ of Church community to expand more love around the world.
We have witnessed how the members of the Iglesia ni Cristo in Da Nang, Vietnam are united in this endeavor by inviting their friends and colleagues. They're willing not only to give material help, but most importantly, the true help, the words of God that will benefit them in all aspects. Reporting from Da Nang, Vietnam, I am Eliana Faith Sebastian. We live in extraordinary times.
Thank you, Eliana. Meanwhile, Michael Hudson and our EBC Net 25 crew visited the Southeast Asian food hall located in downtown Seattle. It features street eats, food cart style, serving favorite menus from Thailand, Vietnam, Singapore, Philippines, Indonesia, Myanmar, Laos, and Cambodia, or other words, ASEAN. Take a look.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of Plate Date. I'm Michael, and in today's episode, we're going to be following Rex and Francis, who are on Asean Street in Seattle, Washington, who will be tasting a variety of Asian food. Let's go check it out.
Asean Street Food Hall is a new and exciting dining destination in Seattle, offering a wide variety of authentic Southeast Asian street food. The hall is located in the bustling downtown Seattle neighborhood and features several vendors selling delicious and authentic dishes from countries such as Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and others. We have the manager here who can explain a little bit more about the conception of the name and what to expect with your dining experience.
Yeah, ASEAN is actually comes from Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It composes of the 10 Southeast Asian nations. Well, my boss actually has several Thai restaurants here, but then he wants to expand, and the closest thing is ASEAN, I guess. So that's why we brought the Southeast Asian nations here. So different foods here in this food hall.
As soon as you step into the establishment, you're greeted with the aroma of a variety of spices and herbs, hinting at the mouth-watering dishes that await you. The atmosphere is bustling and lively, with vendors showcasing their traditional dishes and colorful stalls. From desserts to soups, meat to vegetables, there's something for any palate to eat here.
Along the walls, TVs are plastered for you to view menus, dishes, and cooking examples of what the hall has to offer. The decor is colorful and reminiscent of food stalls in their native countries. If you look up, there are milk crates as well on the ceiling, which I found fascinating. In today's social app foodie environment, you can see a lot of cuisine here starring on reels or shorts.
If you're visiting Seattle for the first time or haven't been in downtown in a while, this place is truly a culinary destination.
Yeah, we hope people or tourists, or locals craving for Asian foods or ASEAN foods, just do drop by here.
The vendors here are passionate about their food, and it shows in every dish that they serve. Now, we're pretty hungry, so we'll move on to ordering. Payment is easy with any touchscreen kiosks located around the hall. Okay, now for the best part. Let's eat!
Alright, so we are hungry and we are ready to dig in. So
Yes.
Rex, what are you eating for today?
That's the funny part. I don't really eat curries, but I'm gonna be experimental. I'm gonna try to, widen my palate and see what this is all about. So I got the Burmese pork curry with a side of rice. I always gotta have the rice. So, okay, let's give it a shot. Actually, I don't even know how to eat this. How about you, Francis? While I'm trying to set up, what are you trying right now?
So what I have is a Hainanese chicken along with a veggie soup and rice, cucumbers, and I believe this is a ginger sauce.
Go ahead, let us know what you think.
Okay. So the Hainanese chicken I'm having is a steamed chicken, and I'll go ahead and dip it in the sauce. Which is a very ginger sauce. Has a little bit of a kick to it. It's not spicy, but it's really good. And then of course the rice.
Got
rice is rice.
Rice is life.
So Rex, what are you having?
I'm getting the Burmese pork curry.
Oh, that sounds good.
I don't normally eat curry because I think it's too spicy for me, but I'm here trying out new food, so let's give it a go. I mean, this sauce looks beautiful, honestly, and you gotta have the rice. Rice is life, and let's dig into it. All right, here we go. Okay. That's the funny part, Francis. It's more sweet and savory, not spicy. I mean, there's a little bit of kick, but there's some peanut, and I don't know how it's sweet, but it just goes really well with the pork. I mean, this is really good. This is a really good curry. We're getting the pork hock stew, or it's with a pork hock over rice, which is pig. I want to say leg, but looks like we got some rice, some deviled eggs, some Chinese broccoli, a spicy sauce, and some of the sauce. Let's try it. Let's go. Let's try it as is. Savory, very tender. The sauce, it tastes familiar. Very similar. I want to say maybe Filipino cuisine, maybe. I don't know if it's something like an adobo or but there's something familiar about it. It's like something clean and in the middle.
Oh man, that food looks delish. So make sure if you're in Seattle to check out Asean Street. We'll leave links down in the description. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us on our episode today. And make sure to follow us on all of our major social media platforms at Eco News Live. Until next time, we'll save you a seat on Plate Date.
Thanks, Michael. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.